This is a video I've wanted to make for a long time. If you played Need for Speed Underground 2, this will hit you right in the nostalgia. 2004, you fire up your PlayStation and this is the first thing you see. And right here, this building, you pass it on the very first straightaway of the game. And today we're recreating it. And if you enjoy these kinds of projects, don't forget to like and subscribe. It's the easiest way to support my work. Now, let's get started. I'll start this project with some research. I've spent time searching for screenshots from the game, trying to capture as many angles as possible. The challenge is that there aren't many clear views of the building, making it difficult to get the proportions right. I went through old gameplay footage, paused at different moments, and tried to piece together details from what I could find. But finally, I found a video where I could get a solid reference image. With this image, I can now calculate the scale based on what I can see. I've designed all the parts for the building in Illustrator, making sure every detail lines up as good as possible. There are many elements to take care of, measure and align, especially when there is some tilt on the walls. I've got a pretty good understanding of the building and now it's time to put my calculations to the test. For this build, I'm using 3mm plywood for the walls and 9mm for the roof and ground layer, it giving it the right weight and structure. I'm cutting everything on a 100-watt laser, which makes quick work of these materials. I always prefer laser cutting over 3D printing when possible. It's way faster, requires less post-processing and gives me the clean, sharp details I need for builds like this. With all the parts ready on the table, it's time to assemble. The building turned out in 55 pieces in total, but the structure is made simple, each part has its own place. The wall pillars slide right into place and they also support the big glass front windows. It's always a great feeling when everything actually fits, like solving a puzzle where you made all the pieces yourself. I'm using a black wood primer for the painting, don't ask me why, but that was what I had in the workshop. Not exactly the smartest decision, but I'm applying it with a regular brush to coat the frame of the big front glass windows, trying to keep it even despite my questionable choice of materials. Now here's where I really could have planned better. I didn't even think about painting the pillars separately to avoid spills and actually speed things up. Instead, I'm doing it the hard way, carefully painting around everything like I meant it. And just like that, I paint the pillars separately, something I should have figured out earlier, but progress is progress. The difference between painting these by hand or using spray paint is huge. It saves so much time, as you can clearly see. So I did the smart thing and went to the store to grab a regular spray can to speed things up. I'll be honest, I work pretty rough. Not every project is meant to be a perfectly detailed display piece. Some are built just for the final photo, so I focus more on the overall look rather than obsessing over tiny details. My goal is always the final image. That's what really matters in the end. But if you ever want me to go deep into detail work on a specific project, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to break it down and show you exactly how I do it. You have seen me when I'm assembling the car rental signs. The engraving and letters are perfectly matched, so they just slide right in. A little super glue and it's done. Quick and simple. I also made a holder for the sign just to keep it standing properly. A bit of super glue on the front face, press it into place, and that's all it takes. No need for overcomplicated solutions. When we go back to the screenshot, you can see a desk in front of the signs, so that's what we're building next. I designed it in Illustrator, adding some simple clips for easy assembly and simply aligned everything. I need 2 identical pieces, which is 6 pieces in total. I thought I had measured the clips perfectly though. I made them just a bit too tight. So I had to bring in the rubber hammer to convince everything to fit. I applied a gray coat on the board, nothing fancy, just a quick base to even it out. Now that everything is painted and ready, it's time to put it all together and see how it looks. This is the first real moment of satisfaction in a new build, when everything starts to take shape. The best part is there's no guesswork when placing the pieces. The construction of this building is designed to be simple, and almost every part has a clip that slides right into place, making assembly quick and precise. And I have to say, the signs turned out great. The red and blue letters really make this and brings that gaming nostalgia to life. I glued the sign holder in place with some super glue. I didn't add any clips for this, which in hindsight would have been a great idea. The roof was the hardest part to calculate because of the tilt of the building. I wasn't completely sure if it would fit, since we had to deal with some angles, but luckily it did. For the base of the road, I'm using cork material, super useful for a lot of builds, and even laser cuttable for cool details. I didn't need to make any size adjustments, so I went straight to painting. I used a gray wall color and rolled it out evenly. The natural texture of the cork does a lot of the work for us. I left it overnight, and when I came back it was curved. Happens when the paint dries and shrinks the material. Shit happens. So I had to glue it down and put it under pressure to flatten it. I used a board from a construction store and some regular wood glue to get it back in shape. I had another board in my studio, which has some serious weight actually, so I let it be pushing the curved road for about an hour. In the meantime, while the road is stretching, I add some rough texture to the concrete walls on the building. I keep it simple, just a quick spray, then drag it off with some cloth. It's a fast trick that adds depth and dimension and a more natural look. Next step for the road was adding more textures. I tried adding a water ripple mixture to the asphalt, hoping to create some glossy spots for extra depth, but honestly, it didn't do much. So I will go for something else. I decided to add street lines to make the road feel more authentic and ready for further textures. I laser cut a template for the lines, which completely removed the guesswork. After spraying, I had to touch up some areas with road color where the template didn't fully cover, but that was quick. I just placed the template between the sections and filled in the missing spots. Now it's time to add some greens and bushes. It's always a sign we're near the finish line. I made plant decorations to stand in front of the glass windows for extra detail. A laser cut base, topped with foliage and fixed with a water glue mix. Once dry, it stays in place. While the other bushes are drying on its own, I start on the middle section of the road. This part will serve as the foreground for the final photos. I spread wood glue across the whole area and apply ground material from Noch to cover the plywood. When placing the middle section, I noticed the height was off. The 9mm plywood sat too high on the 3mm cork, throwing off the alignment. To fix it, I marked the area and carefully carved it down with a blade knife, removing just enough to get a flush fit. It took some effort, but the adjustment made a big difference. After smoothing out the edges and cleaning up the dust, everything was finally level, and I could move forward with the build. To give the middle section a more authentic feel, I used the same texture technique as before, spray paint and a quick rub with a cloth. This part won't be too visible, but adding extra detail is always worth it. I started refining the road with more texture, using the same technique as before. I randomly spray quick strokes, then swipe it off fast to avoid harsh edges. Starting rough helps blend the layers naturally. The more we build on this, the better it will look. Next, I move on texturing the asphalt by adding more defined edges and subtle variations. To do this, I use a piece of cork from the cutout as a random edge template, which naturally creates irregular patterns. I spray over it, then immediately swipe in different directions. By repeating this process in multiple areas, I can build up layers of texture, making the surface look more natural and worn. To bring the middle section to life, I start by covering the base with regular wood glue. Be sure to fully coat the areas where you want to have grass. In my case, the whole area. Then sprinkle on, for this project, 2mm static grass. Next, I add clump foliage from wood scenic to break up the uniformity. As I mentioned before, this area will serve as the foreground, but the more texture we add, the better it will blend into the final scene. And the final touch, a palm tree, a model I picked up on Amazon. Not the most realistic one, but it does the job to complete the look. I added more clump foliage to the middle section to secure it, since I'll be moving this piece around when I'm photographing. It's a versatile foreground element, so locking in the details now will keep it consistent in every shot. I go over both the new and old bushes with another layer of water-based wood glue mix. I don't like when foliage moves around, so this extra coat helps keep everything in place. I sprinkle some final ground details, simulating fallen leaves and scattered greens to enhance the scenery. At this point, I feel like this scene is looking more like Unreal Engine than a 2004 game engine, but that's a fair upgrade. Last but not least, we go back to the screenshot one more time. In front of the building, there's a pottery with a small palm tree, a great detail that helps sell the scene. I printed a similar pot, but the surface needed some sanding to smooth out the edges. Once that was done, I took one of my palm trees and adjusted the size to better match the in-game look. To make sure it stood properly, I used my Dremel machine to drill a hole in the base. After that, I glued it together with hot glue and painted the pot white. These small details really make a difference. I think it's time to add a main character and do the magic. It's definitely not my most detailed diorama, but let's see what photos can do. It's time for the final reveal. After all the planning, building, detailing, and picture it all, the details that created by lightning and a crisp image is way better than what we're seeing while building. The lighting, the angles, it all plays a part in bringing this nostalgic world to life in miniature. This has been a super fun project, and I think it turned out great. If you enjoyed this build, don't forget to like this video, drop a comment to let me know what you think, and subscribe if you want to see more builds like this on my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.